All right, that's Mick Egan starting it off. All right, let me do this. I can always do this again. All right, welcome to Liberty Revolution, a broadcast dedicated to the principles of personal freedom and personal responsibility. I'm Egan, and today is September 11, 2014, the 13th anniversary of the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and Pentagon. Some of us today are reflecting on that gruesome event and spending time with family and friends, quietly talking about the murders that changed the nation. Over 2,700 killed in the World Trade Center, 189 killed at the Pentagon, 40 crew and passengers dead in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Some 1,400 cops, firemen, iron workers, construction workers killed from cancer as a result of their efforts to find survivors at the Trade Center. My brother-in-law, a wirelether, helped in that cleanup. My daughter-in-law's brother, a New York cop, died as a result of cancer after extended duty at the Trade Centers after 9/11. Let me say this about the poison that was in the air around Lower Manhattan after 9/11. The EPA chief, Christine Todd Whitman, should be arrested. She told the workers, the cops, the firemen, construction crews that there was no environmental threat from the debris. But the workers from the EPA all showed up in spacesuits. And these poor bastards who volunteered their time and some even their lives couldn't even get a wallboard mask. So as a result of this attack, we've been at war for 13 years, losing over 6,800 American military personnel. And we've had two presidents, same agenda. Last night, the president addressed the nation about the latest threat, ISIS or ISIL. Not sure what the difference is. I do know that whatever you call them, they publicly beheaded 2 American citizens. The war goes on, and there is no doubt that it has spread. Just give you a little background. My politics is libertarian. No matter what your politics, this wanton act of 9/11 was an act of war. I may have a different view than some of my libertarian colleagues on what needed to be done and what still needs to be done. And I may get some guff from some of them. Some of the more zealous libertarians would have me hand in my membership card and join the neocons. But I respect them, even like some of them. And this is my slant. We all know what happened on 9/11. The morning of 9/12, then President George W. Bush had the whole country behind him. I saw people who hadn't spoken in years stand shoulder to shoulder. The civilized world was with us, and that morning I told my wife that Bush should go to the Senate and demand a declaration of war against Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Egypt, and those camel fuckers in Saudi Arabia. Instead, he instituted the War Powers Act, got congressional approval, and invaded Afghanistan. What was that all about? The War Powers Act, I don't know. But no declaration of war, because had he done that, a draft would have been instituted, and in this country, the draft is worse than a gay Haitian degenerate junkie having unprotected sex with high schoolers. He then pivots and goes and invades Iraq with some lame horse shit about yellow cake and the dreaded weapons of mass destruction. Draw a penis on my forehead and shoot me with a pea gun. That's insane. Made no and makes no sense. And that crowd Bush had with him was just the bunch that could have sent those buggers to hell. I mean, he had Darth Vader, Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, Ashcroft, Condoleezza Rice, Tennant, Rove, Wolfowitz, Pearl, all those. And they're some of the most despicable human beings around. Are you telling me that clique couldn't get bin Laden, couldn't settle this terrorism mess, couldn't reassert the USA as the world's beacon of freedom? Instead, we go for Saddam. And according to some advisors in the White House, Saddam was tight with Al-Qaeda. What? No. Saddam would have shot those peckers in the head and rolled them in a ditch. He was no friend of bin Laden. So we bog down in Iraq, lose bin Laden in Pakistan, and get military personnel killed for weapons of mass destruction which weren't there, and Afghan warlords we funded and armed when they were the Mujahideen when Carter was president, and who kicked the Soviets' asses back to Russia. Now they're the enemy. You know, these Afghans have been fighting for 5,000 years. It's what they do. All of them. They rolled Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, Roman generals, Alexander the Great. Not one of them could beat these guys. But had we declared war with all of civilization with us, we could have. And drop every ounce of ordnance we had on them. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear, all of it. Turn Afghanistan into a moonscape. And what do you think would have happened? And so much for empire. What did we ultimately get? The Patriot Act, an egregious threat to civil liberties, and the Department of Homeland Security. A behemoth, ineffective, cumbersome sloth bureaucracy that hired people who were too incompetent to get a job in the private sector. And a president who quickly said, all is well. Go shopping. All right, more thoughts. I'm Egan. After this, we'll hear a little of Mick Egan here. All right, Babe Cat Spider. That's Mick Egan. You're going to have to bear with me a little bit. I'm not even sure this is going out. I'm just kind of testing out a few things here. I want to try to get a weekly radio show off the ground. So I'm just kind of somewhat not prepared all that much, but I am trying, and I'm trying to get something done here. So maybe we can hear some Blues Buddha, Tommy Dudley, an old friend of mine. Maybe we can get him on as we go along. But I want to get back to what I was saying about this war on terrorism. And in my foreign policy scenario, Afghanistan should look like the moon on LSD right now. Some would say it would start World War III. Others, we'd lose our souls as a mass murdering nation. Some would even say it wasn't far enough, that we should take out China and Russia like a patent krieg. And look, I know this is harsh, visceral, maybe not thought out logically, but explain to me the logic of war, and I'll reconsider. These crazy bastards are still fighting the Crusades. To them, this is the fifth crusade. Time means nothing to them. They still have a Dark Ages mentality. You don't reason with that. Why do you think there was relative stability in the world in 1990? Because crazier people were in charge in the Mideast than the jihadists. They just shot them in the head and dumped them in a hole. Is that good? Well, I say yeah. I don't know, you could disagree, but damn right it's good. Say what you want about the commies in the Kremlin pre-collapse of the evil empire. There weren't any Nazis marching around zig heiling and busting up the Schifferau. As soon as they collapsed, those crazy Nazi bastards dusted off the uniform and started goose-stepping across Romania, Albania, and into Tajikistan. You need balance in the world. There will always be anarchists willing to kill and be killed. The Mujahideen were praised for the freedom fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan, but now they're terrorists. Which is it? We funded the freedom fighters. We armed them. The duplicity of American foreign policy is inherent. It is the result of empire. It has always been so. Since the Greeks, Alexander, the Romans, the Holy Roman Empire, the Brits, now us. All of us lie, weasel, threaten, backstab, bomb to get an edge, when the real enemy is right in front of us, and we don't do anything. We led from behind in Libya. Gaddafi is dead, and anarchy reigns in North Africa. Saddam is dead, Iraq is in hell. Egypt is chaos, Mubarak is gone. Iran building a nuke, Syria in genocide with Assad laying waste to his country. Putin marching into Crimea, supporting separatists in Ukraine. You know, my wife points out that Saddam was a murdering thug, that he was Hitler. Is she right? Yes. But what do you want to do? There have been thugs throughout history. Taylor in Liberia, Amin in Uganda, Mao, Stalin, Caligula. The list is long. If we take responsibility for all of this, we'd lose our minds. I mean, you could even go and say, what about the Great Flood? You want to bleed for the dead there? The Bible says the dead were all sinners. You want to put on sackcloth and whip yourself senseless for all? They weren't all sinners. We got genocide and mass starvation in sub-Saharan Africa, Mexican drug lords murdering people in the hundreds, maybe thousands, global warming, global cooling, environmental disasters, economic collapse in parts of the EU, earthquakes, monsoons, typhoons, plague, pestilence, famine, biblical disasters. Is this new?